Today we are going to do Unit 1, Lesson 4. It's going to be a shorter lesson, but it's going to feel like one of the most difficult ones that we've done so far this semester. The entire topic of today is fractions. Really what I'm going to teach you how to do is just to eliminate the fractions so that we don't even have to deal with them. But it's intimidating to look at some of these problems with how many fractions they have. So I just want us to really keep focused on getting rid of the fraction, okay? If you can just picture, let me do step 1, get rid of all the fractions, then after that it's going to be easy breezy, just like the regular lessons that we did on solving multi-step equations, okay? So the first thing that we're going to need to do is find the least common multiple of the denominators of if you have only one fraction or if you have 8 fractions. You just find the least common multiple. We will then use parentheses and multiply every single term in the equation by what the least common multiple is. And after that, we can simplify and solve like normal. So let's go ahead and start here with example number 1. So I only see one fraction right here. And so my least common multiple for this one fraction is going to be 4. So because my least common multiple of the denominators is 4, I will need to multiply each term in my equation by the number 4. So here's how that'll look. Okay, 4 and then 4. There's only 2 terms in this first equation, so I just need to do it twice. Now what I'm going to do is simplify this. So 4 over 4 cancels out, and I'm left with just m equals, and then 3 times 4 is negative 12. And that's it. I'm all done. What I want you to do now is to try example 2. Pause the video and see if you can write down what is the least common multiple and then solve the equation. So my least common multiple is 4. So I'm going to multiply both sides or both terms in my equation by 4. So 4 over 4 will reduce to just 1x. And then equals, and 5 times 4 is 20. And that's my answer for number 2. Let's look at number 3, because it is slightly different. In number 3, my least common multiple, let's decide what it should be. And it is this 5, it's the only fraction. So I am going to multiply both terms in this equation by the number 5. 5 over 5 simplifies, and I'm left with only 3x. And now I need to multiply 5 times negative 6, and I get negative 30. And now I've got to do a second step here to get the x by itself. So divide both sides by 3, and I get negative 10 equals x. And if you want, you can use a reflexive property and flip that around. And that's it. Great job. Number 4. Let's see what our least common multiple is for number 4. And I do want you writing this down every time because that least common multiple is the most important new piece of information that we are having to extract on our own. And that is the key to making all of these fractions go away. All right? So my least common multiple in this one is 3. So I'm going to multiply both terms by 3. And now let's start to reduce. Anything that can be reduced, got 3 over 3. Bring down the negative m, and 2 times 3 is 6. And then I cannot leave my variable with a negative sign in front of it. So to get rid of that negative sign, I will divide both sides by -1. And so now I have m equals -6. Great job. Okay, in our next row of examples, things start to look a little bit more dicey because we now have more than one fraction. So let's start out by finding what the least common multiple is for number 5. So I'm looking at my denominators, 3 and 4, and what is the smallest number that they can both go into? And my answer is 12. 12. All right, so what I'm going to do is multiply both of the terms in this equation by 12. I'm going to do 12 times 3, and I see that that will be 36 over 4. T equals, and then I'm going to do 2 times 12 and get 24 over 3. Once I've done that, now I can simplify these fractions, okay? What I will get here, 36 divided by 4 is 9t, and 24 divided by 3 is 8. And my last step is going to be to divide both sides by 9. So my final answer is t equals 8/9, which is a fraction. Great job. Let's try number 6. I want you to tell me what the LCM is. Some of you probably got there really quick. Okay, the least common multiple that they have is 12. Some people might have thought 24, and they do also both go into 24 evenly, but we want the smallest number that they go into. So what we're going to do is multiply both terms by 12. Both terms by 12. All right. And now the last time that I did this, I just multiplied the tops and then I brought down a fraction. If you want to do that, you can. I want to show you another way that I sometimes will reduce these, okay? So 12 on top and 6 on bottom. 12 divided by 6 is 2 over 1. And then what I could do is 2 times the -5, and I get -10 over 1, which is just 10. Let's try the other side now. What I would do is 12 over 4 reduces to just be 3, and then 3 times 3 is 9. So if you feel comfortable doing it this way, that is completely all right. If you would prefer to do it the way that I showed my work in number 5 so that you can visualize where all of these numbers are coming from, that's okay too. There is no right or wrong way to do this. All right, and so my last step for getting this x variable by itself is to divide by -10 on both sides. And I'm left with x equals -9/10. And remember from last semester, it doesn't matter with a fraction if your negative goes on the top, the bottom, or in the middle. Let's look at number 7 together. Number 7, we are kind of taking this up a step. So my LCM for number 7, I need to look at all of my fractions, okay? So I see a 5 and I see a 2. So my LCM is going to be 10. Now I want you to look at number 7 and count for me how many different terms are there in this equation. And the answer should be 3. There is one term on the right, one term all the way on the left, and then there's this term in the middle. We need to multiply all 3 terms by the 10. Alrighty, so let's start by just simplifying what these will be. I have 10 times 2y will give me a 20y. I have 3 times 10 is 30 divided by 5, and that is a 6. I'm going to bring down the negative, and then 10 divided by 2 is 5. Now we're going to solve this two-step equation. So start by adding the 6 to both sides, and then 20y equals 11. Last step is to divide by 20. And 11 over 20 cannot reduce, so I'm just going to leave that exactly how it is. What I'd like for you to do now is to pause the video and try to do number 8 on your own. Remember to start with identifying what is the LCM of your denominators. All right, welcome back. Number 8 might have been a little tricky for some people. You might have thought that the LCM was 8, and it is something that they have in common, but we want to go with the smallest again, okay? So, starting from left to right, I'm going to simplify this. I see 4 over 4 is a 1, plus that is a 4 over 2, which is 2, and I'm going to bring down the t, equals, and then I have 4 times 4 is 16. Now I'd like for you to pause the video again and finish solving this on your own. And so my final answer that I got was either 15 halves, or you could have converted that to a decimal and got 7.5. Let's move on. We've just got 6 more that we're going to do together. And I think I'm going to do 9 and 11 and 13 and 14. And 10 and 12 are going to be ones where we stop and you practice, all right? So in number 9, my LCM, let's look at my fractions. I have a 2 there and a 4 there. So the LCM will be 4. So I'm going to multiply. So I'm going to multiply all 4 of these terms by the number 4. All right. And now I'm ready to simplify. 4 times 1 is 4, divided by 4 is 1x, plus 4 times x equals 4 times negative 3 plus 1 times 4 is 4, divided by 2 is 2x. In this equation, I see variables that need to be combined. So let's go ahead and subtract this 2x over to the left. And now I'm going to put all of my x terms together. So 1 plus 4 is 5x's. 5x's minus 2 is 3x's. And this 12 is negative. That's better. Lastly, I'm ready to divide by the coefficient of my variable term. And I come to the conclusion that x equals 4, which is a nice pretty number. I'd like for you to, again, pause the video and try number 10 on your own. Let's do number 11 together. Now, normally I do teach you that whenever you see parentheses, your very, very first step is to distribute. And when there's a fraction in front, I do not want you to immediately distribute. I still want you, as soon as you see a fraction, your goal is to get rid of that fraction. So find the LCM. In this case, there's only one fraction, so it's going to be a 5. And I want you to multiply both sides of this equation. There's only 2 terms. Multiply both terms by 5. And what happens on the left is 5 over 5 reduces to 1. 1 times 2 is 2. And then bring down the rest of this term. And now I'm going to do negative 3 times 5 and get negative 15. And this problem just became significantly easier. Now that there's no fractions, we are ready to do our distributing. 2x minus 4. Add the 4 to both sides. So I get negative 11. And now I divide by the 2. I know I'm kind of going fast. We've been working on these fractions now. Or not fractions, but equations for a little while. All right, and so this is negative 11 halves or negative 5.5. You can write your answer as a fraction or a decimal. Just know that if it is ever a multiple choice problem that you are completing, you need to be able to convert back and forth depending on what the multiple choice options are. Right now, I'd like for you to pause the video and work on number 12 on your own. So I have gone ahead and I showed all of my work for number 12, including what my LCM is. And if you have any questions about number 12, please raise your hand and ask. If we're ready, we're going to move on into example 13 together. This is the same process that we've done before, except that there's just more terms. So let's see how this is going to look. I want to look at all the denominators and I want to figure out what my LCM should be. So 2 and 5, the smallest number for 2 and 5, even though I have a repeating 5, it's still just the 2 different numbers. I've only got 2 different numbers here. So 2 and 5 is going to be 10. We don't worry about any repeats in our denominators, all right? So I'm going to multiply all the terms by 10. So there's 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms, 4 terms, 5 terms. So there are 5 terms, and I just multiplied all of them by 10, and now I'm going to start simplifying. So 10 and 1 is 1, divided by 2 is 5. 10 times 2 is 20, 20 divided by 5 is 4. And bring down the t. 10 times negative 1 is negative 10. 10 times 1 is 10, divided by 5 is 2, plus 10 times t. And now I'm looking at a problem that is so much easier to figure out what to do with it. We are going to start with combining like terms. So I see a 5 and a 10 here. So that's going to be a negative 5. I am going to move over my 10t's to the left. You might have chosen to move them to the right. Either way is okay. The answers will still come out the same. I'm going to add this 5 to both sides, move away the constant term. Bring down the negative 6t. And finally divide by the coefficient of the variable. So my final answer is t equals negative 7 over 6. Great job. And we're going to do number 14 together. So number 14, we're still going to find the least common multiple of our fractions. So 2 and 3 is 6. So I've really only have 2 terms. When I'm looking at a problem like this whole thing is considered to be a single term. So, and this also is. So I am going to multiply those 2 terms by the number 6. And here's what's going to happen. I'm going to have a 6 divided by 3 on the left. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And then I bring down the rest of the term and I put it in parentheses. On the other side, on the right, I have 6 divided by 2 now, and that will give me a 3. And then I bring down in parentheses the x minus 1. So the hardest part with something like this is to put the x plus 1 or the x minus 1, whatever those 2 things are, in parentheses. That way, when we come down to our next step to distribute, we know that that 2 is getting its way to both terms. So 2 times x is 2x plus 2. 3 times x is 3x. And 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. I'm ready to start combining all of my terms. Let's move the x's to the left or to the right this time. 2 equals x minus 3. You could put the 1 there if you wanted, but you don't need to. And then let's move away this constant term. And I have x equals 5. Great job. All right, I just want to back up for 1 second. At the beginning of 14, I said that we're going to keep doing what we've always done. And when I say that, I mean with fractions in this lesson, finding the least common multiple and multiplying all the terms in the equation by that term, by the multiple. So I still did that same method for number 14. I just wanted to back up and make you aware that I do know that in middle school, some teachers taught you something different. And that if you wanted to do that, you still can. And that you would get the same answer that I did. Some teachers, when you have 2 fractions set up equal to each other like this is the only time where you are allowed to cross multiply. And if I cross multiplied, I would get 2 times x plus 1 and 3 times x minus 1, which is exactly what I wrote in this step here. You would still get to that same spot. I don't teach it that way because the only time that you can do that is if you have a ratio, and that is two fractions that are being compared to one another. So just be careful with that. I prefer that we try to just learn one process for getting rid of fractions, no matter what kinds of fractions you have. All right, that is the end of today's lesson. And now there's a quizzes assignment that I would like for you to practice. Because these fractions are so intimidating for so many of us, practice is really the only thing that's going to make perfect. All right, and don't forget that you can do that homework 5 times to get the best score possible.